What's going on, everybody? Anthony Campo here, Chief Coach of Battle Ready Business. And on today's episode, I just want to talk to you and tell you my story and how I got started. So sit back, relax, and I'll see you on the other side. All right. So I want to take you back. I want to take you back to, my childhood, because that's where the foundations of this all started. That's foundation of, wanting to own a business, and then I'll get into that, want the lifestyle that I am working for, that I'm moving towards. It started because, my mom and dad separated when I was 6 years old. And so I didn't get the experience, from the age of 6 all the way through an adult, where my dad being there in the morning, driving me to school, coming home at night, having dinner like a family. I didn't, like a lot of you, didn't get to experience that. So that planted a seed within me that I wanted to have that for myself in my life, for my kids in the future, from a very early age. And the first time that I realized that I made a commitment, was in my sophomore year in high school. I was playing, it was the 8th game of my sophomore year playing football. And we were playing my dad's alma mater, Hawthorne High School. And, I asked him to come that day, and he actually made it so he can show up to that game. It was on a Thursday. A lot of our games, especially growing up, t-ball and all that, baseball growing up, Little League, whatever you want to call it, were during the week, so he wasn't able to make it because he had a 9 to 5. And he showed up to that game, and I remember being so happy, grateful, wanting that for just so happy that he was able to show it. I had a really good game. I was able to share that with him. One of the things that me and him had a bond with was over sports, and him and I played golf, and he always mentored me in my the way I approached the game and my mindset and everything, and I'm eternally grateful for that. And I felt so happy that day, and it was that day that I decided, hey, I'm not gonna be in a situation where I cannot show up to my kids' games. That I'm not gonna be there for, every day with my kids. That no job is gonna stop me, because my dad, went to live with my grandma, and they lived in Torrance, and he worked in LA a lot. And, once I got into high school, he worked in Orange County, but still, the job that he had, he was a body shop manager for a dealership, and that was his trade. That's what, my grandfather and him were in auto body and insurance adjusting, so that was their shtick. So, needless to say, he did not want me to get into the automotive industry. It was just him, because everybody, there's great people in the automotive industry, but, he saw a lot what happened with him, how he got stuck into it, and he just wanted something different. And I wanted something different for myself, but at that time, my primary focus in high school and even up until college was playing football. I went to high school so I can play football. Literally, I drove to a private school, and, my dad did, live with his grandma rent-free with his mom, so that one of the reasons so he can pay for a private school. It wasn't that we were well off or anything like that. I remember my mom, really trying to figure out how to make things work. But we weren't in a sense of poverty in that sense. But it was a struggle at times. So, fast forward to after that day, I didn't really know what that meant, that day, when I knew that seed was planted within myself, that commitment to myself and to my future family, what that meant. But at that time, my focus was hey, my mom pounded me going to college, and I was like, I wasn't a good student in high school. Like, I literally slept through a lot of classes, and it wasn't my thing, right? So going into college, like, I had one opportunity to go away to college, and I ended up not taking it, probably because of a girlfriend or something like that at the time, and ended up going to the local community college to play football. My only thing was like, hey, I want to play football. I want to go to college to play football. My biggest dream was I want to go to a D1 college to play football. So I went to a local community college to play football, and went through my freshman year, had a good year, and then the sophomore year, going into my sophomore year, my freshman spring, when I actually, in football-wise, you become a sophomore, because all the sophomores have moved on. We found out that my dad was sick, and I remember picking up his x-ray results of his chest. He wasn't feeling well and all that, and he ended up, I looked at him, I picked him up, and I read him, and it said large mass, and it was that day that I knew, one of my biggest fears, because, one of the things that I didn't have, fearing that I would lose him again. And growing up, I remember, staying the night at his house, and he had he had real bad sleep apnea. Like, he was known for snoring and waking everybody up and being upstairs, and you can hear him downstairs, and he's snoring so loud. But he would stop breathing, and as a young kid, that was scary. But there was this fear that I wouldn't have him all my life, that I wouldn't have that normal, like, I'm gonna grow up with my dad, and my dad's gonna see my grandkids and all that. So, he ended up getting further testing, and they gave him 6 months to live. At that point, he had lung cancer, and again, like, my world revolved around football, and that's it. And, I was going to put that on hold, and he said, hey, I need to get better so I can go watch you play again. And that right there was, whoa, that right there, like, pointed me down the direction of going after just playing football, and then, like, going into playing that season. But, halfway through that season, the reason I tell you this is because halfway through that season, like, it wasn't looking good. I wasn't able to see him as much as I want, and I knew deep down that it was limited, that the time was limited. So I remember coming off, like, the third or fourth game, whatever, and having an amazing game, and then the next game just, like, running past people, like, in a daze, in a cloud. And I said, look, this isn't right anymore. Not only am I risking my safety, because if my head's not in the game, I'm going to get lit up and I'm going to get hurt. That I had to go take that time away, right? Stop playing football and go spend time with my dad. And I was starting that season. I started my freshman season and I started my sophomore season. So, I walked away from the one thing that I love the most, but not as much as I love my dad. Getting a little emotional, but I ended up losing him that January, and the thing that I took away from that experience, like, literally passed away in my arms. I remember laying, he would start coughing and he passed away. And, being my mom being separated and me being his only son, like, it was up to me to handle his affairs after the fact. It was up to me to have, I had felt the sense of responsibility, like this internal voice. And for me, I've interpreted that's, for me, that's the voice of God saying, hey, now you're the man. You've got to step up and you've got to lead your family through this. So I took on the organizing the funeral and doing all those details and helping people delegating off the responsibilities and really leading that charge. And after that process was done, it was like, okay, something inside me said, stop fucking around in school. Like, you've got to go apply yourself. And that's when this spark, like, I had this drive and this fire to go be the best on the field and play the best football and do all this other stuff. But, you know, there was, when it came to school, it wasn't that, you know, because my only options moving forward, like, I didn't know what I was going to do. You know, I needed that last season. I needed that last 6 games to present that on my resume to the next level, to go to the next level. Like, you know, I already gave away one. I was talking to a couple people, and that was it. And then a couple, you know, I did have, fortunately, have like 1AA schools and I forget what they were called. They were not NCAA schools. Even after I got done with my season, but then a coach said, "Hey, you want to play rugby?" So fast forward, I go up to Berkeley, come back, and then I'm left in another situation where, like, that didn't work out. Berkeley didn't work out due to my own problems. And then what do I do now? So I started going to my first semester at Chapman University and not playing sports. It's just weird, you know, doing all this other stuff. So a couple years after that, like, my mom, like, from my dad's money, she, like, forced me to buy a house. Like, she's like, "No, I'm doing what my mom did with me, and I'm gonna use that money, and I'm gonna help you buy a house, and we're gonna figure out to start this senior care facility." And literally, that's my intro into business. And once that was open, you know, I remember when I was living in that house trying to pay the bills, and I didn't know how to pay bills. Like, it was, you know, I go from that into like owning a business, and I'm like, okay, well, what do I do? You know. But then the possibility came up, and I had no training. Obviously, I wasn't a good student. You know, I had 1 semester of accounting, and that was it. And I don't think I think I dropped out of my management class. I don't remember. But I ended up talking to my buddy in a car ride home, and he started telling me about his major, and then, like, all these things he was learning, all this you know, and it was leadership and organizational studies. And I was like, oh man, we had this long conversation. I'm like, oh, I'm switching my major. So I switched my major to leadership, and then I was like, oh my goodness, leadership. And then, oh my goodness, I have this business. Oh my goodness, like, oh, this is a possibility. Like, I could own this business, and I could, well, what if we had this many locations and this many? I would write the numbers down. I'd be like, oh my goodness, it'd be amazing, right? And in the meantime, my mom and we ended up joining forces underneath the same company. And then my sister joined, and then my aunt joined, and then we took that and went from 2 to 10 facilities, like, really fast, like within a year and a half, 2 years. And, you know, I had 2 of my own locations and stuff, and, like, you know, I didn't know all this stuff, so I started reading books. And I remember one of the first books I read was, like, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I read all his books. And then I went on to the next one, and then I bought this coaching program that was, you know, about operations and how to create processes and stuff. And I was like, whoa, this is amazing. Like, just kept sucking it in, and, like, it became a addiction over and over again. And I would have these ideas, and I would bring them to my mom and my sister. And I would bring them, and they're like, it's so great. And they would be like, no, they wouldn't see the big picture. And I'm like, why isn't this working? And then we're like, well, we need to start having meetings and doing this, but there was no leader. There was no official leader, because it was more like a confederacy of states versus, like, the centralized government. And it was like nothing would really get done. I mean, we did business, we did that stuff, but, like, real awesome, cool stuff that I was wanting to be a part of, like entrepreneurial, not just like, hey, we have a business, wasn't getting done. Like, and I was, like, so frustrated. And, I debated back and forth. Do I just jump out on my own, or I stay in this, or whatever? And I'm like, if I could do something, I'm going to do something I truly love to do. And in the meantime, I started CrossFit, and I had previously done, you know, personal training and that in the first couple of years of college, and I always loved, like, being in the weight room during football and the sports and stuff. So I am like, I've got to go do this. So I started out of the garage kind of real slow with, like, homemade equipment and stuff. And then we ran that for a couple years. And I said, man, this is what I kept wanting to do, but I was scared. and I was afraid. And I remember talking to my wife, she like back and forth. And then I finally was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And I did it. And then it was time we got kicked out. We kept getting in trouble with the city for running it out of residential garage. And, I filed a permit and postponed it about 6 to 9 months. And then it was finally time. So then I made the leap of like leasing a space. And like one of the key things that I did was like, my mom wanted to buy a building, wanted to lease, wanted to be my broker. I was like, Mom, no, I love you, but I need you. I need to do this on my own. I need this all by myself. So ended up like going out and doing that. And I was like, I know I need support. So like I joined a mentoring group with a bunch of other CrossFit gyms. And, they were talking about systems and sales. And I was like, oh, okay. And it was really a struggle to understand all this stuff and what did I need to implement, what I need to focus on. And I was like educating myself all the time. And, about 2 years into it, it started to click. Like, I remember like jumping out and, at that time too, I was like, beginning of the year, it's time to go. And like, the thing that I knew that I had to go all in like on this. And I'm very like all over the place, obviously schooling and ideas and probably whatever you want to call it, but I love to come up with ideas. But I needed to focus on that. And so we just started implementing and stuff. Boom, started going. And I loved it, and we did really well. And like, we grew that. From 2010 to 2013, like we double, and we just rapid growth, right, with it. And it was like having that time of like, I had this idea of like what we're gonna do. Boom, and we did it. Boom, we launched this, and we did this, and we did this, and everything else. Like, but it came to a point where my skill sets were limited. And ended up hitting a wall at some point because, I ran into like, we were marketing, but I didn't 100% like, I knew what I was doing, but the marketing was, we were doing a lot of content, and I was like, well, I need to learn how to market. And I didn't give ourselves credit that we were doing that and all that stuff. And then we started hitting a wall. Things started changing in like that space, relationships, all this stuff. We started to hit this adversity, and we started. We had a coach leave when they took some people, and previously we dealt with adversity. I had personally dealt with it all right, and then I broke it off with my mentor, and like I was left alone, and I was like, I didn't know, like just something inside of me, like. Just kind of like started to like being on this island alone, and I knew that I needed to go down this path. I knew I needed to like face this, but I didn't know how to. So I tried things and everything else, and then I tried things and failed. But when I failed, I really took it personally. I really took it to heart of like it was me that was messed up. Not that I tried something and it didn't work. That I messed it up, and then I wasn't doing this, and then it just spiraled out of control. Like, not really out of control. I just got so frustrated that I was so disenchanted with this new thing that I loved, right? This became the gym, and this whole environment became my new, like, sport, my new football, like, my other love, like, it replaced that. And it was amazing. Like, it's as far as a work, earning money and doing that, and it was a great time of our lives. One of my favorite times. Everything's different with kids and everything else. That's not good. So, but in that time, like I started helping out that mentoring group. Like they had an opportunity to become like a subject matter expert and run your own mini consulting group with them. I was like, I raised my hand. I was working with some guys. And I was helping out doing it, and it was like, I would go to conferences and like, these local affiliate conferences for the gyms, and ask questions like, oh, this is how you do it, and it was amazing. Somebody like, I'm having this problem with this. I'm like, okay, this is how you do it, and there's something else started to rise up inside of me. I was like, this is great. I love this, and then I ended up taking on and presenting a new program at one of the seminars, and that was awesome too. And that began to come to an end, and then as I started to lose myself throughout that process, gym slid a little bit. The industry changed a little bit. I mean, there was a lot of things going on. We had an external from the other business that I was still a part of. We were fighting a lawsuit. We were going through, I had to go through a lot of things, a lot of change, from 2012 to 2016. I mean, the last since then, it's been a lot of change. We had to fight and settle a lawsuit. We had to, I got married, all this different stuff. And then eventually in 2016, had a kid and took a job in the same day, in the same month, within less than 2 weeks of each other. And then it all changed, right? And I walked away from myself as a business owner, and who I always saw myself to be, right? Because I knew I had a responsibility. I was disenchanted with what I was doing, really disheartened in like what was going on, and there's a lot of other dynamics that go into that. But the beginning of last year, I started working with my buddy of mine. Was like, hey, talking to me about his business, and said, hey, man, I don't know how much longer I could do this for. Like, we do all right, but it's a lot of work for not that much reward. I might as well just go work for somebody. And being where I was, knowing that, hey, I always wanted to own my own business and stay with my own business and do that and have, that control over my life that a business can provide for you if done right, and have the financial independence that a business can give you. It's not guaranteed. I was like, yo, I know you, and I know where I've been, and let's not do this, right? Let me help you. Let me look back from a distance and see like a bigger picture for you, and like, let's talk about what's going on. And in those conversations, like, I was like, man, this is amazing. I love this. I truly love this. And I was like, okay, man, this is awesome. Let's just keep meeting. Don't worry about paying me. I'm just gonna do this pro bono for you. I have a job. Don't worry about it. And then within a month, I walk in the office and they're like, we gotta let you go. I was like, you gotta let me go? I just moved here. I moved to Utah from California just less than 6 months ago. 7 months ago. And I was like, okay. So, took the weekend to think about it, and I said, no, I'm going to go do business coaching. And kind of brings me into last year. This is a long episode. But, so I hit the ground running. I was like, I'm going to do it. I went and hired a coach because that's what I felt was successful before. It helped out. I got a client, got another client, and then someone started to rise up again. Boom. This internal voice really, really rose up. I was like, who are you? Who the hell are you to do this? You don't know what you're talking about. What have you done? Psh. And it was a real challenge, right? I had to face something that was there all along. Because if I look back, like, it was there before, and it was always holding me back. So I stopped. I stopped putting out live videos, any content, or trying. Even when I was doing it then, last year, it was like, that little voice was there. Who the fuck are you? The fuck are you doing with this? Like, and it sucks. So I had to face that over the last 6 months. So that brings me here to today. You know, I know now, even if that little SOB comes back, I've got something for him. So it brings me to today. And that's why I keep, this has probably been the most consistent week and a half of doing these lives, or not lives, these recordings. And this is where I have to start. Get up every day and say, fuck you, I'm doing this. Or not even fuck you, I'm going after it. So, I share that with you just to show you where I'm at. So maybe it can provide you, you can learn something out of my journey. So, thank you for listening. This is probably the longest one I've done. And I'll talk to you soon.